All right, good morning, everybody. How we doing? Happy Veterans Day weekend. Where are my veterans at? Like, you have to, raise your hand or something. You clap for them. Yes, they need some clapping. So, this morning, I actually came to the office, and on my desk was a bobblehead of me. It says Captain Chris Plug and Pull Veterans Day 2017. I don't know if you guys, yeah, there we go. So, that, I didn't even know you could do that, personalized bobbleheads, but there I am on a bobblehead. So now it's official. Yeah, this is a great day. Veterans Day is awesome, and I'm a veteran, and there's a couple things that I fondly remember, and a lot of things that I'm glad I'm done with. So, I'm grateful to have served. It was a real honor. But the thing that reminds me and makes me think about this week is we're about to make a huge commitment, and it's scary. And so, in fact, do you guys have your commitment cards or your check or whatever? And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, just don't even worry about it, and I'll explain in a second. What we're about to do today is pretty intense. We're about to, for a lot of us, we're going to give money to our Love the Door campaign, and it's been something we've been praying about over the past 6-7 weeks. And it reminds me of the day before we went from Kuwait into Iraq. It was super intense. All the guys wanted me to pray over them 100 times, spiritual revivals happening. It was great. And there was a sense before we crossed over, we wanted to make sure we were ready. That was an intense moment. Probably even more intense than that was the first time I jumped out of an airplane doing a night tactical mass over 1,000 people jumping at the same time at 2 a.m., all right? So the first time you do that, that's scary, okay? And so I was at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and we're in this big pack shed. Pack just means personnel for some reason. And think of a gym like this that goes 5 gyms down, and there's seating things that allows you to sit with your parachute on it, so it's got a little thing that holds up your parachute. And we would go through the JMPI, which is a Jump Master Personnel Inspection. And so the Jump Master would go and kind of go through all your thing. And so you wanted to make sure, the Jump Master was going to check you, but you wanted to make extra sure, because it's your first time, that you're going to go out of an airplane at 800 feet. And when you think 800 feet, you're like, that's not really that high. Exactly. You don't have much room for a mistake. Once you're out of the aircraft, 800 feet hurts like 30,000 feet, but you don't have as much time to pull a reserve, okay? So you are very much in the sense, I want to get it right the first time, because when you go out the door, it's a leap of faith that your equipment is right. And the reason I'm telling you this, as you hold your commitment card or your check in your hand, is that we need to make sure our equipment is right before we exit the aircraft. Because if we give with the wrong heart, I think it will have consequences to our faith. Because I want us to have a heart that's ready to be excited about what God is going to be doing. And I think there is, when we're doing our equipment check, we're really looking for 3 types of things that could cause our chute to malfunction. Okay, here we go. The first one is going to be being a materialist, or being high materialism. Our culture has been invaded by materialism. I don't think anybody here is going, no, we are frugal people who only spend things on what we need. Nervous silence, awkward moment, keep moving. Okay, and here's why. And it's not that in here we believe in God, but in here we also believe in hard work. We also believe that, God gave us a brain for a reason. But the important thing to realize is that God gave us the brain. Okay, and we're going to be talking about that because there's a tendency for us to forget, and then we kind of have this concept that I've got to do everything I possibly can to make it happen, and if I'm not going to make it happen, who is? And it's all on my shoulders, and I need to do a lot, and then I should be able to reward myself for that. And so we're going to talk about some of the misconceptions that materialism can bring, because in reality, you can't take it with you when you die. And a lot of your treasures today are tomorrow's garage sales. Okay. Secondly is another hindrance to us is the prosperity gospel, that I'm going to give to this capital campaign, and I'm going to get, baby. The money's going to be coming in and flowing out of my ears. I'm so excited about that. Okay, so that's another misconception that could shipwreck your faith a little bit when you give, and then all of a sudden the Bentley's not rolling in the driveway next week. That's a problem. All right, and then thirdly is that there's some of us who've grown up in churches, and usually it's people who've grown up in churches, and so you've got this like baggage that you come with that I give because God's mad at me, or like the preacher's mad at me, or someone's gonna judge me for not, and or like you've sinned a lot last night, and so therefore you need to make up for that somehow, and by giving a whole lot of money kind of like takes your guilt off. Like that's just a great way to get rid of that. And I want to make sure that we're not giving with that sort of heart. So the question I'm gonna ask at the end is, why are you gonna give today? And if you're just joining us, this is getting a little distracting, sorry. Put my guy over here, my bobblehead right here. If you're just like new here, you're like, what are you guys even talking about? In the past 6 weeks, we've been talking about moving into a new facility. It's been a really exciting thing for us to be doing. Yeah, you can clap for that. It's awesome. And we're going to be moving into the Roost, which is right on Wells Branch Parkway, and we're going to have a permanent facility. There won't be set up and tear down, and all those great things that go with it. But more importantly, it gives us a center of the community to be a place of hope for the city. And what we really believe is that the gospel is going forward out of here, and we're planting churches, and we're sending out missionaries, and that's not stopping. And we want to have a greater ability to impact our community here and Pflugerville and Round Rock and Austin by our ability to serve it. And so that's sort of what this move is all about, for us to have greater capacity to reach more people. And what we've seen over the past several weeks is that we've been following the story of David and his capital campaign to build the temple. And last week, we talked about how even though they had $154 billion, if you do the exchange rates, it comes about that, set aside in the national treasury, 154 billion current modern day dollars in their ancient treasury to build a temple, David still gave $5 billion. He still gave $5 billion of his own money, and then he challenged the whole congregation to give as well, and they gave $8 billion. So talk about a capital campaign. I mean, that's a legit capital campaign. $13 billion raised in addition to the $154 billion they already had to build a house of God that the whole world would come to worship. And that was a place, the one place, focal point where all the world would know that God was here, that he loved the nations, and that the only place where you come find his presence would dwell on the earth. And so that's where we were yesterday. And then last week, and this morning, I want us to get to a place where we understand the heart of giving. Because they gave, and then after they gave, David reflects on it in like a celebratory prayer and song to God. And he talks about their motivations. He talks about their why they gave, which is just really cool. And so that's what we're going to get into here. We're going to be in 1 Chronicles chapter 29. If you don't have a Bible, raise your hand in the air, wave like you do care, and a Bible will come to you. If you don't have a Bible at all, this is our gift to you. We're in 1 Chronicles 29, starting at verse 10, and that's on page 357, the Bibles we're passing out. All right, 1 Chronicles 29. Here we go. Therefore, David blessed the Lord in the presence of all the assembly. It's like, woo! Look what we just did. Look what God you have done. All right? And then he's going to go into detail of what happened. And David said, blessed are you, O Lord, the God of Israel, our Father, forever and ever. Okay? And now he's going to say this. I want you to count how many times he says everything is God's. Because remember we said when we hear something 3 times, that's important. When you hear it 10 times, really, 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 really important. Here we go. Yours, O Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the victory and the majesty, for all that is in the heavens and the earth is yours. That's fun. We can say it together. Ready? On 3. 1, 2, 3. Yours is the kingdom of, O Lord, and you are exalted as head above all. Both riches and honor. Now this is a little tricky because it says come from you, which means the same thing as it's yours, and you rule over all. In your hand are power and might, and in your hand it is to make great and to give strength to all. I want everyone to say it with me. It's yours, God, not mine. Look at your person next to you. Say it's yours, God, not mine. Okay. Now listen. We understand this like theoretically, but you know who doesn't understand this at all? My children. Like this is something we really have to explain because they have one word that they've memorized and mastered. It's their mantra, mine, right? And it takes a long time to train that out of them, all right? So there's a lot of that still in us because this is the way we talk about my money because whose else is it? All right, now watch. So that's how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, that's 6 times there. Watch this. And now we thank you, our God, and praise your glorious name. But who am I, and what is my people that we should be able to thus to offer willingly? For all things come from you, and of your own we have given you. For we are strangers before you and sojourners, which just means you're immigrants to earth from heaven. As all our fathers were, our days on the earth are like a shadow, and there is no abiding. Everybody dies. Everybody's terminal. O Lord our God, all this abundance that we have provided for building you a house for your holy name comes from your hand and is all your own. Oh, there we go. There we go. All your own. Now listen, David has done this intentionally to explain to all of Israel and to remind himself and share with those generations afterwards, because it's funny how, listen, this is like, we're talking roughly 3,000 plus years ago. David is praying this, saying this. And the same issues then are the same issues now. People don't change. You don't need an anthropology degree to see that people are selfish, all right? It's just that's in us. But here it is. The antidote for materialism is understanding that God owns it all. Because isn't the fear, because when we talk about giving, the reason why you pull your iPhone close and make sure your Apple Pay is like guarded is because of this. You're afraid that if you give your money away, you'll have nothing to live on. You've said these guys, or I somehow won't be provided for. Well, over and over, God in his word says, like Malachi 3:10, bring the whole tithe to my storehouse, and I'll have so much blessing I'll give you pour out so much blessing you won't have room enough for it. God is always about providing for his children. Now, the problem with materialist people in general, a lot of them don't believe in God at all. So it's like, okay, God's going to provide for me. I don't believe in a God that provides for me, so that makes that null and void. The problem, too, is that what happens is that we take that mindset that the culture is sort of putting on us. You got to make sure you got enough, and you got to make sure you got your kids' college paid for, and you got to make sure all these other gazillion things that we've got to have in our lives, because if you don't have it, then you're not going to make it, because it's all dependent on you. And we've taken that from the culture, and we sort of taken that mindset that we better be saving like inordinate amounts. And listen, there's wisdom in saving. I'm not against saving, but what I'm saying is that when all of a sudden our trust goes in our effort, and our trust goes in our money, and our trust is off of God. Do you see that? That's why that Malachi 3:10 verse where you bring the whole tithe to God and see if I will not pour out so much blessing you will not have room enough for it is so valuable, because what God's saying is, I will provide, trust me. And the other piece of that is that when we understand that God owns it all, what does that make us with the money we have? That makes us managers, right? Managers. And a manager has to give an account to the owner. And so that means that God cares what we do with his money. And I think sometimes we don't view it or think about it like that. Probably one of the best managers I've ever known, okay, I'm going to take myself back to when I was 16 years old working at McDonald's, okay? All right, so I was working at McDonald's. I was the drive-through guy, and I love my job. Hello, and welcome to McDonald's. I did that every week. It was so fun. It was so fun. And I had a voice like that even when I was 16, so they go, is that one of them computers? And I'm like, no, it's not. We're here. Anyway, I had fun. So I'm there in the drive. It's a Sunday afternoon, and we have the trucks that come and, restock McDonald's, they come every day. And so we had a 6-hour window till the next one was coming to restock everything. And all of a sudden we run out of ketchup. Now this is McDonald's, and we're on 114. I don't know if you know anything about the Dallas Metroplex, but 114 connects Fort Worth and Dallas, 114 major thoroughfare even back when I was 16. All right, so there I am, and we run out of ketchup. I go, that's funny, and like I don't care because I'm 16, right? Who cares? Yeah. And I'll never forget the manager. He was like 20, 24, 25, and he goes, we're McDonald's. We don't run out of ketchup. And I go, all right, well, we have no ketchup. And so he gets into his car, drives down, it wasn't that far, down the street, down to Walmart, buys a gazillion packages of ketchup, like the little ones, like, a million of them, brings it back, and then there we are. Moved from the drive through the kitchen. We're like, squirting ketchup into the thing. We're making it happen. And what that told me is that guy like took his job as a manager really seriously. I mean, we could have gone 6 hours without ketchup, and I thought it would just be funny, like, I'm sorry, there's no more ketchup for you today. And that would have been fun. We could have made it funny, ha, 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 McDonald's ran out of ketchup, but he's like, McDonald's name or that owner's name was right. I mean, I don't know who owned that particular McDonald's, but man, he took that role seriously that he had to give an account to the owner. So before you give, I want you to make sure that you're giving account to your owner. You're just managing. All right, next piece. And so what's really cool about David is he's going through this like systematically. First, we're going to take care of prosperity, and next we're going to first we're going to take care of materialism, and then we're going to hammer this thing of the prosperity gospel. Watch this. Verse 17. I know, my God, and he's praying, that you test the heart. Now remember, whenever you see something more than 3 times, big deal. Here we go. That you test the heart and have pleasure in uprightness. In the uprightness of my heart, I have freely offered all these things. And now I've seen your people who are present here, offering freely and joyously to you. O Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, our fathers, keep forever such purposes and thoughts in the hearts of your people, and direct their hearts toward you. So he's saying, listen, God, I know you test my heart, and I had $5 billion that I could have saved for another reason, and I just gave you my $5 billion. In the uprightness of my heart, I freely offer all these things. And then he looks around, and they've given $8 billion. And the reason is they want to direct the purposes and thoughts of their hearts and direct their hearts towards God. Now, for David, he wants that to happen. For all the people, he wants that to happen. And then he really wants it to happen when his prayer turns to his son. Watch this. Grant to Solomon, my son, a whole heart, that he may keep your commandments, your testimonies, and your statutes, performing all, and that he may build the palace for which I have made provision. He wanted it for himself, he wanted it for all his people, and then he wanted it for his son. Look at this. The antidote to the prosperity gospel is giving to direct our hearts toward God and his purposes, and not to ourselves and our purposes. Do you see that? That's a long point. Write that down. The antidote to the prosperity gospel, which says, I am going to give so that I can get something from me, is you give to direct your heart toward God. It's the treasure principle. When I invest in God's kingdom and God's kingdom moves forward, I find joy in that. Now, here's what this is what I've run into recently. A person came up to me, and they didn't mean it. I don't think in their heart of hearts they were thinking that they were saying this, but this is what they were saying. You know what? The way you become a millionaire is you tithe $100,000 up front. And I'm like, that's like an investment strategy, okay? So if you're a certified financial planner, what you would do is you would say, listen, you give me your money, you trust me, here's your percentage of risk, and you're going to get this sort of return. And so what he's saying is, like the Bible says, bring the whole tithe and see there's going to be so much blessing you won't have enough room for it. So I'm going to bring $100,000 to the table, put it in to my certified financial planner, God, and then he's going to give me $1 million. You know what that is? That's magic. Because it sometimes works, right? Magic always works some of the time. And so what happens is that when you sort of look at God as your tool to get you more for you, then he's just more of a financial plan, as opposed to I'm directing my heart towards you, God, and your promises, and that your joy, and that you will always provide. Because God's promise isn't that you're going to be king ruling with Bentleys, but rather that he will never let you go hungry. He will always provide for you. He doesn't promise you're not going to have suffering. He doesn't promise you're not going to have a struggle. Otherwise, Paul wouldn't be a Christian. I mean, let's just go through all the guys in the Bible. They didn't never roll in like 10 camels deep anywhere. Like they were entrepreneurial people who invested all for the kingdom, and they ended up rotting in prison, being martyred. Their life didn't look like the American materialistic dream. It looked like hard, but God always made a way, and He always made a way for the gospel to go forward through these guys, which I love that. And so when we look at this, I want you to think of this too, because this is sort of interesting. Remember in Matthew 4, Luke 4, when Satan is tempting Jesus? He gives them 3 temptations. You guys remember there? One, I'll just help you out. One is I'm going to turn this rock into bread, okay, like to satisfy his own hunger, okay? One was to throw himself down from the top of the temple, and angels would come and pick him up and be like, see, God's real. And you know what the other one was? If you bow down and worship me, I will give you all the kingdoms of the world. That was Satan's guaranteed financial plan. All you got to do is worship me, and it turns out really great for you. We can confuse God's promise for provision with Satan's promise for self-indulgence and darkness. Do you see that? See how that works? That's kind of awkward, right? Oh, I didn't really realize that. Okay, keep moving. Watch this last one. If we ever get to the place where it's all about us and not about kingdom advancement, then we've missed it. Because listen, we're here. We're a family of believers committed to reaching people with the life-changing reality of Jesus. And so everything we do, it's not just as we do as a church, but everything we do as people should be about that. Okay, verse 20. Then David said to all the assembly, bless the Lord your God. And all the assembly blessed the Lord. And the God of their fathers, bless the Lord, the God of their fathers, and bowed their heads and paid homage to the Lord the King. And then they offered sacrifices to the Lord. So on top of all this $13 billion they just gave, they celebrate by giving more, which is sort of a weird thing to think about. And then they offered sacrifices to the Lord, and on the next day, burnt offerings to the Lord, 1,000 bulls, 1,000 rams, and 1,000 lambs. So listen, I know, especially if you're PETA people around here, you hear that like, see, God just burning carcasses. No, this was a celebratory thing, and they actually ate these, okay? So it's like your sacrifice to the Lord, and then in the temple, they then distribute. It's a big barbecue, okay? And then they had the drink offerings, and the drink offering was like strong drink. So it's like, this is for my homies, and then like the moment you put it for the Lord, you worship God, and then you pour out the strong drink, and then you party. And with their drink offerings, and they sacrificed in abundance for all Israel. And they ate, okay, that's the eating part, and drank before the Lord on that day, everybody miserable. No, that's not what it says. They ate and drank all guilt-like because they felt like finally they were angry because they gave out of guilt. No, these people, they ate and drank before the Lord on that day with great gladness. Remember what I said about this thing? It's not a tax. David, who was a king, could have levied a tax and said, we're doing this sweet monument capital campaign. It's going to be really wonderful. The whole nation's going to treasure it, and you're going to pay for it. He could have levied a tax. That's what kings do. But they don't. But he doesn't. And when they give, they don't give out of compulsion. They give out of joy. Listen, when I was in my 20s, I had my first experience with like taxes, and like it wasn't just like, I don't know how this worked. Anyway, I show up at H&R Block. It says $1,300. I'm like, yippee. And I thought that meant that I get a $1,300 check from the government, which is, I was just waiting every day, waiting for the mail to come send me that check, and I was really excited. And then one day I got a phone call, and it was the IRS. Hello? And they're like, so you owe us $1,357. I'm like, no, you owe me No, that's not the way it works. Did you read it? Of course, I didn't even read it because the H&R Block, I was just like, yeah, it's $1,300. I'm like, sweet, I'll just wait for the check. And it was just $1,300 the other way. And so I was little heated in our conversation as I said something about government, blah, 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 blah. You know how that went. And then I was just like, and they're like, listen, we can work it out. You can pay it off in whatever installments. And I was just like, I don't care how many installments. Because I owed it. I was not thrilled about owing money. Because you know what? Listen, when you have that sort of mentality, you get to this legalistic world of like, I'm going to give, but man, it's just going to make us even. Or maybe I'm going to give and then God's going to owe me. See, listen, the antidote for legalism is giving out of joy and not out of obligation. My son, Jet, so, this past month in October was candy month. And so we had a bunch of candy in the house. And so I gave a chocolate ball or something to Jet. Or I let him choose out of a little bag. He grabbed a little chocolate ball. And then he got, his eyes are like bright and he's so excited. He's like, and he takes a bite. He's like, yay! And then, I'll never forget, he looks at me, and he looks at his chocolate, and he breaks off a thing. Breaks off a little piece of chocolate. And I'm just kind of watching, and he go like this, and I go, oh, yeah, that's your chocolate. He says, no, Daddy, take it. And I go, really? And so I take the chocolate, I put it in my mouth, and then he smiles at me, and then he skips off, and he puts the rest of the chocolate in his mouth. And I was like, oh, man, that's it. My 2-year-old understands this concept of the reason why there's deep joy in him giving me a piece of the chocolate I gave him. It's all about the relationship. Because when you give out of something of like a sense of I'm sharing what God has given me with him, because the relationship I have with him is so strong, so amazing, I want to see his smile. Do you see that? That's a father and a son. That's a father and a daughter. That's stuff like, I'll tell that story forever. I'm like, there was a day chocolate, he gave me a chocolate. Why? I had all the chocolate in the world. I had way more chocolate than he did. But he gave me a teeny little piece of his chocolate, and all of a sudden, I am telling that story over and over again. Like, Adrian's not going to believe what happened. Oh, it was so great. Because that's the stuff that when you have a son or you have a daughter, you get excited about that. Because it's all about the heart. But the problem is, and maybe you grew up in a church that was a little bit more legalistic. And for you, you were like, well, all right, I'll give my 10% and that's all I'm going to give. And then you sort of feel angry when everyone asks for more. Like there's some of you here, you're like sort of angry. I'm even talking about it. You're like, dadgummit, again? And here's what I want. And listen, Grace and I, he played worship, and I spoke at another church in the area. And they passed the offering plate towards the end. And the pastor gets the plate, and he goes, "This it? This it?" And he passed it around again. "No, we're doing this again. Play it." Grace said, "Start playing another song." And Grace was like, all right. I mean, it was so awesome. I was like, oh, that's so weird. Okay, so listen, there's like some of you came from that church background, and you're just like, here comes the offering plate again. Here it comes. I'll just put my hand in there. Maybe I'll take out, I don't know what you do. You like put a whole bunch of crumpled bills in there, so it looks like I don't know how you feel. I don't know how you handle that. And so for you, maybe you've come from that sort of a background, and so every time we talk about giving, you start guarding yourself because you're like, man, I already did that. You missed it. You know why you missed it? There's no joy. Like when Adrian and I this morning, we're writing a bigger check than I have ever written for anything in my entire life for this. And I was just excitement. Like, no, we're really doing this. God's given us the ability to do this. Like, we're really doing this. There's no obligation. There's none. In fact, if you're a member here, we want everyone to fill this out, and you can write a 0 in here. I'd be totally cool with that. If you're a member, like, if you wrote a 0, there's no judge. I wouldn't even know, to be honest with you, so I guess it doesn't really matter. But like 2 people in the entire church will know who it is, and they're not going to tell me. So you can feel confident about that. That this is between you and God, and the joy that you feel when you get to give is like glorious. It's an exciting thing to be part of advancing kingdom forward. Don't you just love that? I love that. I'm like, come on. But if there's like this sort of part of your heart that's like, I'd rather you just kind of sit back and just don't give. This is not a have to. This is a get to. And so the question I'm going to leave everyone here with is, why are you giving? Are you giving out of this sense of deep joy? Are you giving because you want to advance the purposes of God's kingdom forward? Or are you giving, or just not going to give because you earned it, it's yours anyway? Remember, there's 2 things that David challenged Solomon with, which was just really beautiful. And I think this encompasses it. One was build this temple. He gave him that charge, build this temple. Another one was like, don't you deviate from the law. Love the God, Lord your God with all your whole heart. Keep his commands, keep his statutes, have a relationship with God. And he said, you will always be protected that way. And one of the things that David did before this, which was not good, is he took a census of all his soldiers because he started to trust in his army to protect him because he was a warrior. That's what warriors do. And warriors, the bigger your army, the more comfortable you feel about your country. And he was like, I want to protect this. And he started to trust in his army, and he started to count up his people, and God disciplined him for that. And so he looks at Solomon and said, don't rely on the strength of numbers. Love the Lord with your whole heart. Build this temple so the whole world will have a place of worship. And Solomon, check on the first one, building that temple. I'm going to get that done. Check the box. But you know what's impossible to check the box? A relationship. Adrian, I already said, I love you. I'll let you know if it changes. I mean, like that's sort of how it comes with God. Like, you don't just do it once. It's something you renew all the time. It's like his mercies are new, and so our love is new, and so we connect with new. And so what I want you to see is that Solomon, it looked like he really trusted God because he didn't build up an army. But you know what he did do? He was a super savvy politically. He wasn't the warrior that David was, but he was super savvy politically. You know what he did? He intermarried with all of his potential enemies. So he would have kids, so their grandson was his kid, so there'd be no way that those enemies would attack. And then you know what happened when he did that? He started to worship their gods. Which is why the God of materialism is always knocking at the door. Saying, no. Come worship me. You deserve it. The prosperity gospel is always knocking at the door. Listen. God's the best certified financial planner ever, and if you use him to get to your financial goals, or there's this thing in me that I'm just so guilty, and I need to make up for it by giving a whole lot. Now listen to me. Those are all false ways to view it. We give out of grace. We give out of this thing of joy. And the most important thing to remember is that the reason we're doing this is we want to have an epicenter for ministry to reach people in hurting spots. Sutherland Springs, the massacre that happened there, didn't happen just because. It happened because there's actual evil on the planet. Did you guys know that? Like real demonic evil. And it's not just there, but it is there. That's only 100 miles from us, which means it's right around us everywhere you look. And we don't walk in fear, but we walk in power of the Holy Spirit, that we trust a God we cannot see. And our hope is not in riches, but in He who richly provides. And so my heart this morning as we give for this campaign is that we would say, God, I want your kingdom to go forward. Would you use me to push back the darkness? And then we would watch what happens. Because Jesus came and he died on that cross and he rose from the dead for the people that massacred and the people that were massacred. He died for all of them because that same darkness that's in that guy is in me. And that darkness that is in the people that are seemingly afflicted and they're hurting and they hate you, and you've experienced run-ins and friction, and it's hurt people who have been hurt that are hurting you. And so my heart is that we'd understand that Jesus came, he died on that cross, and he rose from that. And the only hope for those in darkness and death and desolation is Jesus. And our hope isn't just to build out a building for so Wells Branch Community Church could have more security and have more people, but rather we could have more impact in this community in a really powerful way so that people would know there's a God who loves them. So there's somebody outside these doors who doesn't even know this church exists, and they're going to be finding themselves coming to our place to hear the message of the gospel. Or we're going to be sending more church planters out. We're going to be sending more missionaries out to reach the world. And that investment is something that always brings return, because the kingdom is going forward. So this morning, if you're not a Christian here, my heart is that you would hear this message and not think, yep, that's what churches are about. But rather you would hear, wow, these people are motivated together, united in heart and spirit to push back the darkness that I can clearly see in the world. And my prayer is that you would see that we believe Jesus died on that cross and he rose to the dead, conquering death and sin. And if you are a Christian here today, my heart is that before you take this card or before you take your check and you put it in this box, you wrestle with where you're at. You grab hold of your spouse, grab hold of this card, grab hold of somebody near you, and let's just pray and say, God, make sure that I'm not giving from a materialistic vantage point. I'm going to shortchange, in a sense, what I could do. And I'm not going to give so that I could somehow become a millionaire tomorrow. And I'm not going to give out of guilt. So, would you pray with me? Father, I'm so excited about all that you're doing. And I'm praying that you would use this morning to really help us check our hearts, to help us see really clearly your grace, and to help us to see what we can do to impact your kingdom. And God, I'm praying for somebody here who doesn't know you, that somehow they would see that you, Jesus, came through darkness in the human form, and you died on a cross in my place for my sins, and you did that for everybody here that would believe. God, I pray that we would walk in that truth. We would love you. We would respond to that, and our hearts would be united as we give in truth and love and grace. In Jesus' name we pray.